Today, we'll be looking at a quote from Act 1, Scene 3. Macbeth and Banquo have just met the witches, who prophesize that one day Macbeth will be King of Scotland. Macbeth begins to wonder whether he'll need to murder Duncan to make the prophecy come true. Why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs? Macbeth's mind is filling with images of regicide. He's imagining what it would be like to kill the king, and he's imagining the consequences of that action. The word yield is interesting here. It literally means to surrender. Macbeth is surrendering to the idea of killing the king. He's so mentally weak that he's already been corrupted by the witch's prophecy. Remember that Macbeth has already been described as brave by the sergeant. We're beginning to see a juxtaposition between how the people of Scotland view Macbeth and the deep desires that he's hiding within his heart. This line is also useful when comparing Macbeth to Banquo. Macbeth is yielding to evil thoughts, but when Banquo has a dream about the witches, he prays to God and asks for God to restrain in me the cursed thoughts. Banquo, who is a morally pure character, turns to God in his time of need when he encounters evil thoughts. Macbeth, however, surrenders to them and allows them to consume his weak mind. We can add on to this idea by noting that this is phrased as a question. Macbeth is asking why he yields to that suggestion. It's as if he's aware of his own mental weakness, but feels powerless to prevent himself from going down the wrong path. Furthermore, the noun suggestion reminds the audience that these murderous thoughts are just that. Thoughts. Macbeth has not committed any crimes yet and could easily turn away from temptation. And yet he cannot resist dwelling on these thoughts of regicide. His hamartia, his fatal flaw, is his ambition, and his ambition is already consuming his mind. On the subject of regicide, Macbeth doesn't use that word. Instead, he euphemistically refers to it as a horrid image. Perhaps he's afraid to speak the name of the crime out loud. Perhaps he's ashamed to even consider it. His use of the adjective horrid proves that he understands regicide is morally wrong. He knows God will punish him if he breaks the great chain of being and murders King Duncan. As he thinks about regicide, he mentions that it unfixes his hair and makes his heart knock at his ribs. Literally, his hair is standing on end and his heart is beating quickly in his chest. This is a physical, visceral reaction to his dark thoughts. Perhaps he's thinking about the consequences that await him if he follows through with the witch's prophecy and does murder Duncan. Or maybe he's afraid because he feels like he's losing control of himself. Maybe his physical body and his mind are becoming separate, and the dark thoughts the witches have inserted in his head are beginning to take over. Maybe he's afraid of what that means for him. Before we feel too sorry for Macbeth, let's remember that he did ask for this. After the witches spoke the prophecy, Macbeth told them to stay and tell him more. Since Macbeth actively invited evil into his life, he's now being plagued by horrid images and suggestions, because the witches have in fact stayed with him, in his mind. When linking this quote to context, we want to view it as a warning to the audience about the consequences of regicide. Shakespeare wanted to appease the new monarch, King James I, by making sure that King James liked his plays. King James wanted to make sure people stopped trying to kill him. For this reason, Shakespeare uses this moment in the play to suggest that even thinking about regicide will lead someone to experience mental anguish. Imagine then what would happen to someone who actually follows through and does it. That's what we see with Macbeth for the rest of the play. At the moment, he's just afraid of the consequences and the possibility of going to hell. Later, he'll have to make peace with the fact that he definitely is going to hell. Shakespeare is warning the audience that if you break the great chain of being by killing the king, you will experience a life of mental anguish followed by eternal punishment in hell. To consolidate your knowledge about this quote, why not try putting all these ideas down into one incredible paragraph? Your English teacher will be thrilled. Alternatively, imagine you've been given an essay question about how Macbeth's fears are presented throughout the play. Write a quick 5-minute essay plan, including this quote and two other quotes that show Macbeth's fears throughout the play. What are the differences and similarities between what Macbeth is saying here, where he's thinking about regicide, and the moment when he's just committed regicide in Act 2, Scene 2? Thank you for revising with me today, and I'll see you later.